Hey folks, as you know, I watch online prophets. I watch them, I listen to them, and lately, as I've been watching them, I've been feeling something different. This week, as I was watching, one of the common threads right across the board, and I guess this is probably there a lot, but this week I just happened to notice it, regardless of who I watched, regardless of who I watched, there was this incredibly desperate pronouncement that God has put them in this position, that they have been empowered by God. As I thought about doing a video about what I was seeing and what I was noticing, the one thing that kept coming back to me was, what if I were talking to their followers? What if I were talking to the audiences of those prophets? What would I say to them? I mean, given what I watched this week, what message would I offer them? See, I'm not called by God to a position of authority. You're never going to hear me stand here. I'd probably get 100,000 more subscribers if I did, but you're not going to hear me say something like, I have been chosen by God. God spoke to me and God told me to be here to pronounce judgment upon the world. No, that's not why I'm here. I am called by God. But just like you are called by God, whether you believe in God or not, just like everybody is called by God. And so when I hear these prophets pronounce what they're pronouncing, the questions that I have for their followers is, when was the last time when you listened to them that you heard Jesus speaking? When was the last time you heard a message of love, a message of forgiveness, a message of compassion, a message that God's arms are always open to you, that God's love abounds for all people? When was the last time you heard a message that was filled with grace, not rules, not the laws of Moses, not the laws of man, but grace, unadulterated, pure love being poured upon you directly from God? Not because you've earned it, not because you deserve it, just because God is God. When was the last time you heard a message that called you to feed the poor, that called you to take that money that you were going to offer as your tithe that week and to give it to a soup kitchen or a food bank, to give it to a housing opportunities agency? When was the last time one of those prophets called you to go out into the world and stand by the poor, by the homeless, by the sick, the dying, to stand by the prisoners, to stand by the oppressed, to be their ally, to be their support, to be their affirmation and their encouragement? When was the last time you heard from one of those prophets, do not fear? The Lord is with you. The Lord is with us. And no matter what's going on out there in the world, we take our solace in that. We know that we are protected. We know that whatever may come here, our heavenly home awaits. And so we have no reason to be afraid here. We have no reason to cower here. We have no reason not to be out in the world trying to make this world a better place. You see, I often hear them saying things like, I have been given authority. They're saying it to you, that they have been given authority over you. But I, as a minister, have never heard of God giving authority to a person over other people in this manner. Rulers come and go. Yes, they have an earthly authority over us, but these prophets don't speak of earthly authority. They speak of heavenly authority. That authority was given to one person and one person alone, wasn't it? When I listen to these prophets now, I hear a desperation in their voice. I hear a frustration and I hear despair. They're not entirely certain which direction they're going. They're not entirely certain about the message they're hearing. They seem to be increasingly proclaiming themselves as prophets of God, and yet you and I know from our reading of the Bible, a prophet generally doesn't have to raise themselves up. A prophet doesn't have to proclaim their status. A prophet doesn't have to stand in front of the people and tell the people that God has placed them there. The prophet is known by the prophet's prophecy. There's a line in Shakespeare, and I can't remember which play it is because it's just, this idea is just coming to me now, but it's, "Methinks thou dost protest too much." If these prophets had true authority, they would sound more like the prophets. They would sound more like Christ. They are, after all, Christian prophets. And as Christian prophets, they would speak with hope and love and mercy and compassion. They would call us to be better Christians. They would call us to focus on our lives, to see our lives in new light, to see our actions in new ways, to speak with that new authority that Jesus spoke. But we don't hear this. We hear people that are grasping to their power. We hear people who are desperate to make sure that you know that they have power, that they have been given divine instruction, that they have been given divine guidance, that they have been given divine direction. These prophets that are speaking to us, these prophets that are telling us how important they are in God's eyes. The next time you're watching, just ask yourself, is this a message of love? Is this a message of mercy? Is this a message of compassion? Is it filled with those characteristics of God? Is it filled with hope? Is it filled with strength? And I don't mean strength of their hand, but rather strength that is meant for you. Are their words empowering you? Are they giving you strength? Do they encourage you to set aside your fears? In the Old Testament, a prophet was known because they were right. They spoke in God's name, and it happened. What they said happened. These prophets today, methinks they protest too much. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord's face be made to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord's countenance be lifted up to you. May you always know the peace of being in the Lord's presence. And I pray that as you listen to the ministers, to the prophets, to the priests, to those of your Christian family that are around you, as you hear their words, you will hear the words of Jesus Christ. And when you don't hear the voice of Jesus, I pray you will ask yourself, whose voice is it? Amen.